Okay, so in the motivation I was talking about how sometimes when we really look at the future, you know, even though the future doesn't exist today, we know that we're creating the causes for what we'll experience in the future today. And here I'm just talking, you know, not only on a Dharma level, but just a regular level, you know. If you want a place to live in the future, then you know you need to get a job today so that you can pay the rent, you know. And you know that if you need to get a job, then you need some education so that you can get the job. And so, you know, we're quite aware of cause and effect just in our daily life. And so with that kind of awareness, when we think of the future, you know, and we think of just talking even this life, of the future we want to have in this life, then that influences what we do today. You know, if you are interested in a certain field and you want to explore that and do that, then you study that today. You know, if you want, you know, if you want to live a certain kind of life, then, you know, you don't want to be bothered by court cases and prison sentences, then you abandon certain actions today. Okay? So, you know, that awareness of future results influences how we live today. And so we see it also, you know, people becoming very interested in their health and how to have good health over a long period of time. And so, you know, people who, you know, don't want to get lung cancer, then they abandon smoking, yeah, because they know that that's a cause of lung cancer. Now, sometimes maybe their attachment to smoking is so strong, and their emphasis on the pleasant is so strong that they say, well, you know, I don't have lung cancer yet, so just forget about that. I want to enjoy my cigarettes today. And then they smoke. So that's a choice they make in their life. But then if they get lung cancer, they shouldn't complain to anybody else because they've made that choice. Okay? So, you know, in the same way, when we see that different foods, you know, are not good for our heart, then we don't eat those foods. Or when we see that different foods are good for our health, then we eat those foods. And that's if you have the perspective of the future. But like I said, sometimes people, their attachment to the present pleasure is so strong that they aren't willing to give something up, you know, in order to have that future freedom from certain suffering. Okay, so that's a choice they make, but then they experience the result of it. Yeah. The unfortunate thing is that, you know, not only they experience the result of it, but so does everybody else around them. You know, so the person who smokes, you know, says, well, it's my life, I can do what I want, but then the family suffers when they get sick. Or the same, you know, somebody who doesn't take care of their health very well and eats poorly and then, you know, has heart conditions when they're young. All the people around them are also affected. So it's not just our own life. In the same way when we think about people, you know, wearing the helmets when they ride motorcycles, they say, oh, I don't want to wear a helmet, it's my thing, you know, if I get in a motorcycle accident, I'm the one that's hurt. Nobody should make a law that prohibits me from, you know, going without a helmet when I want to. But the thing is, you know, they aren't individual entities, and if they're in an accident with some other person, the other person's going to feel terrible if they die. Yeah? And so we see here that we aren't just kind of independent entities that, you know, because we're so used to in our American culture of, you know, this just affects me, so get out of the way and stop telling me what to do and don't make a law about this. You know, we're very strong that way. I think this is kind of part of the libertarians and the Tea Party and this kind of stuff, just, leave me alone, get out of here, don't control my life. But the thing is that we do live together, and so what happens to one individual influences other people. Yeah, and so, for example, if they pass a law that you have to, drive with a helmet, you may feel, well, why are they telling me what to do? But what happens to you influences a whole group of people. Yeah, and so we have to, there's something in our American mind, I think, that we need to really work on and see how, not only what we do, but what happens to us based on what we do affects more people than just ourselves. Okay? And then to really care what happens to other people instead of just caring about what happens to ourselves. Okay, so here we're talking just regular, ordinary life, and there's 2 points here. One is that we really take into account causes and conditions when we make choices in our life, because we can see that if we want certain things to happen, we need to create certain causes. And if we don't want those things to happen, then we shouldn't create those causes. Okay? And the second point is that we realize that what we choose to do, and thus what happens to us, influences more people than just us. So this whole attitude of it's my life and, leave me alone is really not, it's not an attitude that's in line with reality. Is it? Because we're not individual isolated units. Okay? Even though we often feel like that and we make ourselves into that, that's not the reality of the situation, is it? We're so incredibly interconnected. Okay, so those are 2 things that we see just talking about this life. Now, if we expand it to go beyond this life, we see that the same 2 things apply. Yeah, that causes and conditions still function, and that what happens to us influences others, not just ourselves. Okay, so in terms of future lives, if we understand that doing certain actions will bring certain results, and we want those results in future life, like we want to be born as a human being so that we don't have so much suffering, so that we have the opportunity to practice the Dharma, and especially if we want to have a precious human life, then there's particular causes in addition to the general causes that we create for being a human being. There's particular causes for having a precious human life. So if we want that kind of life, because we see the benefits in the long term, in terms of practicing the path and not having great suffering and so forth, then we'll make an effort this life to create those causes. Even though sometimes in this life we feel like, I don't really feel like creating the causes for my future life right now. I'd much rather do something else. Okay? So this is, in a little way, like the guy who's smoking, who says, well, the future hasn't happened. I don't have lung cancer yet. I don't know for sure I'm going to get lung cancer. And I really enjoy my cigarettes and cigars right now, so I'm just going to go for that. Okay? And so sometimes, when we make decisions just based on what I feel like doing right now and what's going to, kind of make me happy right now, it's the same kind of mentality as the person who is smoking. The smoker and his lung cancer, and, us and our future lives. It's the same kind of mentality. And how sneaky, attachment is, especially seeking immediate pleasure and immediate satisfaction. It's so strong in our mind that thoughts of the future just fade away. The future just seems like, well, it's not here, so I just ignore it. Okay? Yeah? So it's the same dynamic. Similarly, if we know that, doing certain actions bring painful results in our future life, if we really care about our future life, because we know it's going to be a long time, future lives are going to last for a while, then we abandon, doing certain actions now, because it'll prevent us from having, certain sufferings and certain, bad conditions in our future lives. And so we do that quite happily because our mind is focused on that, and we feel good about creating, the causes of happiness and abandoning the causes of suffering. So it's kind of like the person with their cigarettes. If they say, I want to have good health and I want to be able to, watch my family grow up and do all these other things, just talking ordinary sense here, then, I'm not going to smoke and I'm going to eat properly. And, okay, at the beginning, not smoking is, I'd really want to, but, or eating right is, I'd much rather have my cheesecake and, but okay, I'll give it up because I want to be healthy, and, when I'm older. So, the person, there might be some discomfort initially, but their mind is able to deal with that because they really see the future benefit. And then after a period of time, when they create the habit of eating properly and not smoking, then it becomes very easy to continue to create that cause for their future good health. Okay? So the same way in the Dharma practice, if we're thinking about future lives, initially it might be, but, I want to go out and party with my friends, and I want to, sleep until noon, and I want to, do all this other kind of stuff, and I don't feel like studying. Ugh, I'm fed up with that. And, and I'd much rather spend time on the computer and, these shows where you become another person and you live a whole other life, and, I'd much rather do that, and I'd much rather I am my friends, and I'd much rather exercise my thumbs, texting everybody, why should I care about my future life? Yeah, I'm having too much fun now. Okay, so it's very easy to think like that, and then just, and then besides we have this feeling like I'm going to live forever. Or here my examples were things that, people would say, oh yeah, okay, maybe that's a waste of time. But when we talk about, well, what about, I want to have a career and, really, have a good career and some job satisfaction and make an impact on my field and get some recognition for doing a good job, and, and I want to do that. Okay, but then we need to also consider in that what kind of karma we're creating. Yeah, do we create a lot of negative karma in our job? Does the job such that we wind up lying, or we wind up fudging on things, or we wind up taking things that aren't ours? And by living that whole kind of life, do we, kind of also waste a lot of time because, to have your career, then you need to have certain kind of clothes to go to that job, don't you? You can't just wear your jeans to work. So you need certain kind of clothes, and then society is such that you need to drive a certain kind of car to get that kind of job, and you need to hang out with certain kinds of people and have a certain kind of social life to fit the image of that kind of person that has that job, so that you can do well in that job and progress in your career. Okay, so it's not just going to work that is involved. It's a whole lifestyle that's involved. Okay? So you have to look at that, and then, okay, how much time and energy does that take? and how much time do I have left over to really work on my practice versus, dedicating myself more full-time to practice and leaving behind some of those other things. Okay, so it's a thing that people weigh in their minds, and they figure out some kind of, and for everybody it's going to be real different, because some people they have a very strong feeling for future lives, and a strong feeling is, well, even if I'm not sure about future lives, one day I'm going to die, and I want to be able to die well. And whatever happens in life, after that, whether there's nothing or whether I am reborn, abandoning negativity and creating virtue now is going to be beneficial no matter what. And His Holiness says this a lot. He says, if you don't believe in future lives, still living an ethical life is something that benefits you, because you're not going to lose out if there turns out after you die that there are future lives. But if you don't live an ethical life now, and it does turn out after you die that there are future lives, then you're up the creek, because you can't go back and live your life, and you just instead have all these, imprints of negative karma to take with us. Okay, so he says you never go wrong living an ethical life. And it also benefits this life too. We have fewer problems and difficulties if we live a really ethical life now. Okay, so it's this whole thing of looking to the future and then creating certain causes now and abandoning other causes because we care about what's going to happen in our future life. Okay, or we care about how we're going to die. We're thinking about these things. We're not just thinking about now, or this life, or my present reputation, my present good time. Okay, and so it's quite interesting there. We all have grandparents and parents and aunts and uncles, and to watch what their lives become as they grow old. And then to think, what kind of old person do I want to be? And to try and imagine some of those people who look like they're just inherently old, as if they came out of the womb at 70. It's hard, isn't it? Can you look at your grandparents and think of them as being young and wanting to party? It just doesn't fit, does it? It really looks like they're just kind of like that, They were born 75 and But they at one time were young and thinking just like we think and doing most of the things that we do according according to their version of society. We have certain drugs now that they didn't have before, so they used other stuff to get intoxicated on, or other things they didn't have computers, so they did something else to distract themselves. But it's the same kind of thing. Okay, and then looking at their lives and thinking, oh, well, do I want to be like them when I grow up? And kind of what do they talk about most of the time? And it's very interesting for me, with my grandparents when I was little, and now my grandparents are gone, and with my parents and now just my dad, is how much they talk about the past. And the present is not so interesting because you can't, everything you used to do that was fun, you can't do anymore because your body just can't do it. And so what do? You talk about the past. And the past doesn't exist, and it's just like last night's dream. And so then if you think, okay, do I want to grow up, and if I live that long, just talk about the past? And if I just want to talk about the past when I'm old, then I should really get a lot of, have a lot of fun now, so I have a lot of good memories to talk about when I'm old. But is that really going to be satisfactory? Am I going to be happy as an old person when all I have to think about is the past? Yeah. So that's a big question. And I look at my Buddhist teachers who, are as old as my parents, and their old age is something totally different. Totally different, And they're not thinking about the past, and they're living very much now, and their lives are, very beneficial and very active. And in fact, to try and get them to talk about the past is very hard. Yeah, because they just say, it's just me, it's my life, it's like, I don't want to talk about me. Okay. So very, very different kind of old age. Okay, so things to think about, in terms of what we do now and how it's going to influence the future lives. And then the same thing about, we aren't independent entities. So it's not just a question of me having a good future life. And, okay, don't tell me to create virtue and abandon non-virtue. If I want to, party and screw around all I want to and have a lower rebirth, that's my business, leave me alone. Yeah. It's not really like that, because we have, as we saw just in this life, what happens to us influences other people. Well, so too in future lives, And so we have, throughout samsara, created different karmic connections with different people. Yeah, and so if we're able to progress along the path because of those karmic connections with people, it's going to be easier for us to benefit them than even for some other, highly realized bodhisattva or even Buddha to benefit them because of the power of the karmic connection that we have. But if we mess around and then wind up in a lower realm next life, then how are we, what's going to happen to those people who we could benefit because of our karmic connection? Yeah, what's going to happen to them? And so similarly, this life, if we look around and we see so much suffering with different people and we think, and they're so close to the Dharma, we can't help them this life, and we make prayers, well, may I be able to help them and guide them in the Dharma future lives. But if we don't take care so that we have a good rebirth in a future life, so that we can continue practicing the Dharma and progressing on the path and improving our state of mind, but instead we wind up in a lower realm with a horrible rebirth, what's going to happen to all those people that we've been praying to be able to dedicate? That we've been dedicating to be able to benefit in our future lives. Okay? So here again we see that what happens to us in our future life, it isn't just, me, it's how my future life is going to influence other people. And if I have a lower rebirth, let's say I'm born as a cougar, well, that's going to influence a lot of other beings because I'm going to be killing other beings to eat. So it's not only what's going to happen to the people that I have the karmic connection with, they're going to be left out because I'm, now a cougar for, however many years. But also, while I'm a cougar, I'm going to be directly harming sentient beings. Okay? And so we start to look at that kind of thing, and again, to see it's not just about me. We're really interwoven here. And, I don't want to have a bad rebirth, not only because I don't want to suffer, but because I don't want to be in a position where my karma is so powerful that my mind is overwhelmed and I harm other people in my future life. and I want to be able in a future life to benefit others, and I want to be able to, continue to practice the Dharma and to meet teachers and value the practice and have a supportive community and a good circumstance to be able to practice. So if that's something that's important for the long term, for becoming enlightened, then I need to pay attention to what I'm doing now, because I'm creating the causes for that. And it influences not just me, but a lot of other living beings. And so it's at the beginning we aren't so aware of this, because there's such a strong feeling of me. But as time goes on, we really see how what happens in our life, who we meet, the circumstances, who we have the opportunity to benefit, that, the causes for this weren't just created with what we're doing this life. That these connections and causes also came from having connections and causes in previous lives, making certain prayers in previous lives, And so this becomes more and more obvious to us as we live. I mean, just take the example of the Abbey. We're sitting up here in rural Washington. Who goes an hour north of Spokane? It isn't, a big tourist area where lots of people are going to stop by and see the Abbey on the side of the road and say, oh, I want to go check it out and go what's there. It's not the kind of place that people are going to stumble into. Yeah, but look how many people were able to benefit. Look how many people, come in contact with us and come and visit us and are tuned in through the internet. And, we're really seeing this the last couple of years, that the number of people we're able to benefit is really expanding a lot. So it's not just due to what we're doing in this lifetime. And it's not just due to accident, because, did any of you just drive by Country Lane and decide to come up the hill and check it out? That's not how people met the Abbey. Okay? So there were other causes and conditions, and then, similarly, connections made in previous lives. And for all of us here to have made connections to be able to reach out and benefit people, in our future lives. And we made those kind of prayers last life. So then this kind of result comes this life. Okay? So, we're so interconnected and interrelated, So what we do with our body, speech, and mind has long-term effects for ourselves and others. Okay? So it's something to pay attention to be careful of. And similarly, if we want to, generate single-pointed concentration, if we want to actualize bodhicitta, if we want to have deep meditative experiences, we have to create the cause for those. Those things aren't going to happen, because Peter Pan comes floating by and, with a magic wand does something. Yeah, so we have to create the cause for those things to happen, and and then the result comes this life, future lives, Okay, so this is all kind of a lead-in to a question that maybe the two of you were wondering, because you gave me a topic to speak about today, and maybe you're thinking, oh, when's she going to get to that topic? She's talking about all this other stuff. Well, actually, I'm in the, all of this is coming up to the topic that you asked me, which, and correct me if I didn't understand it right, which was, how do we benefit people, and how do we make decisions about what to do that's going to be of the greatest benefit. Is that the question that, yeah? Okay. So I think what I was talking about kind of is, it deals with the answer to that question. Okay. Then another point in answering the question about, how do we make decisions and choices about what's going to be the most beneficial, especially in terms of career and things like that, is to really do some investigation about what does it mean to benefit somebody. okay? Because we usually think that we know what that means. You know, I understand what benefiting somebody means. But, you know, there's so many different ways of benefiting, so many different kinds of benefit. Yeah, and so we really have to think about it quite deeply. In the same way that when we say, you know, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes, there's so many different kinds of happiness. So we have to think, what kind of happiness are we wishing sentient beings? What kind of benefit are we wanting to do for them? Okay? So we can see that there's material benefit. You know, when people need material things, they need food, they need shelter, they need medicine and healthcare professionals, they need clothing, you know, so they just need material things. We can see that that's one level of benefiting, and that's a level of benefiting that the whole world understands. I mean, today we're having the Eagle Scouts come up here and build the, you know, the houses for our fire extinguishers and hoses. They're offering us this kind of benefit. Yeah? And so, you know, this is a way of benefiting that all religions, all people really value is, you know, benefiting in terms of material things, giving something material that's going to help somebody's life. Okay? But that's not the only way to benefit. Yeah? Because for some people what they need is not material stuff. They already have enough material stuff. Yeah? What some, or sometimes even they don't have enough material stuff. The problem isn't the lack of material stuff. The lack is of their skill in being able to manage it. Okay. For example, some people may earn enough money, but they don't know how to manage their money. And so by the end of the month, it's gone and they're in credit card debt. So what those people need is not more money, but what they need is somebody to teach them how to manage their money, and somebody to teach them how to make, you know, good decisions so that their material resources don't get all used up. Okay? So if we look around, we can see that another way of benefiting others is by teaching them the skills that they need. Okay? So people who need to know how to change the car, you know, the tire on their car, you teach them that. And people who need to know how to use a computer, you teach them that. And people who need to know how to, you know, fix the toilet, you teach them that. So there's, you know, these ways of benefiting sentient beings too, is to give them skills that are useful to them in this life. Yeah, and so people who become teachers, or people who become mentors, or people who just become Boy Scout leaders, you know, this is what they do, you know, or sometimes people who become counselors or therapists, or there's many different kinds of helping professions by which we, you know, can help share skills with people. You know, in social work, in running classes that teach people money management, in teaching health care, and all these kinds of things, okay? So that's another way of benefiting. Another way of benefiting is not just to teach people the practical skills they need in life, but to teach them how to handle their emotions. And how, let's say, not to get so angry. You know, because we can see that anger is very, very destructive. You know, and this is just in the world. I mean, I think most people can see that anger is a big problem in the world. But it's always other people's anger that they see as a big problem in the world. They don't see their own anger as, you know, very seldom do we recognize our anger as part of the problem. Okay, but you know, in being a counselor or a therapist or something like this, you know, then you're helping people on an emotional level. Yeah, doing hospice work, you're helping people on an emotional level, how to die and die peacefully. Okay, as a social worker in a hospital, or as a, you know, any other medical professionals, doctors, nurses, techs, and so on, are giving direct benefit to people, and then sometimes that includes giving them good advice, which hopefully they'll follow, and that will make their life better. So that's another way to benefit. It's in terms of education and giving people the kind of emotional support and, so on that they need. Okay? The thing is, and all these ways of helping are very, very good and really excellent, and we should do those as much as possible, okay? Because they definitely, improve the individuals' lives and thus the lives of people in society, and they help people have a happier life this life. The difficulty is if we only help in those ways, then the benefit that we give usually runs out at the end of this life. Okay? So you might help somebody live a longer life, but then they're going to die. Or you might help somebody, earn more money and learn how to manage that money, but eventually that person's going to die, and in the future life, they're not going to take their money from this life with them. Okay? And so when we really think, well, how can I benefit in a really broad way, then we start looking in terms of, well, how can I help people so that the help that I give them has an effect beyond this lifetime? Okay? And so here is where Dharma benefit comes in. Because by teaching people the path, by teaching them what to practice and what to abandon, then we're giving them the skills so that they can create the causes for their own good rebirths, for their liberation, for enlightenment. Okay, so that's why they say the gift of the Dharma is the highest gift. So that's another level of being of benefit to others, and that's leading to another type of happiness. It's not the happiness that comes from having material things. It's not the happiness that comes from having a good social life. Okay? It's the happiness that comes through changing what's going on in our mind and creating good mental habits, good physical, verbal habits, really using our human potential in the best way. And so that, when we help people do that, that's going to benefit them, not only this life, but in future lives. Okay? So we need to think about that level of benefit too. And with each level of benefit that we give, we need to develop different skills to be able to give it. If you want to give material benefit, you need certain skills so that you can earn the money, so that you can make the donations. If you want to teach people how to do things that are useful for the planet, you have to gain those skills and then learn how to teach and then, do that. And the same for the Dharma. You don't just kind of step up and, after one course or something, then I'm qualified to do that. You have to really learn and practice and transform yourself so that you can, help people with that level of benefit and give them the level of happiness that comes through internal transformation. Okay? So you're giving them the kind of happiness that comes through having a subdued temper, having subdued their temper. Okay? You're not giving them the kind of happiness that comes from killing their enemies. Okay? You're not giving them the kind of happiness that comes from learning how to stay away from the people they don't like. You're giving them the kind of happiness of working with their mind so that wherever they go, they can feel in tune with the people and not have hostility in their own mind. Okay, you're teaching them how to think beyond this lifetime so that they take karmic causes, into effect in making their own life decisions. Okay. Okay, so it involves doing a different kind of work and having a different kind of education to be able to do that kind of thing and give that kind of benefit to sentient beings. Okay? So very often in our lives as Dharma practitioners, we want to benefit others in whatever way we can. It isn't just I'm benefiting this way and forget the other ways. Okay, or I'm benefiting in that way, so I don't need to do these ways. But we try and benefit in whatever way we possibly can. But according to the choices we make in life, and according to where we put our energy, we're going to have the opportunity and the skill to benefit people in different ways. Okay, according to how the training we choose to get and how we choose to spend our time. Okay, so that's going to influence how we benefit, what kind of happiness we're able to spark in others, and so on. And so we need to think about that. Yeah, which is the chief way I want to benefit, and what do I have to do that? Okay, and then of course seeing the other ways to benefit that may not be the chief thing I do, but how can I do those ways as well? Okay? Okay, so now some time for questions and comments. And if I didn't answer all of your question, then tell me and I'll try again.
One comment I have is that it's really easy for the kind of self-deprecating mind to come up that, I don't have what it takes to be helpful in the kind of long-term ways. That might be too hard, maybe can't do it. So I think that's easy to arise.
Okay, so the one thing that causes interference is the self-deprecating mind, and you're saying especially in terms of helping people in a Dharma way by saying, well, it's too hard to practice the path, and the goal's too high, and I'm just unprepared, and I don't have what it takes, so I won't even try. And instead I'll, help people in other ways because I don't have what it takes to do this other thing. I think the self-deprecating mind can come up in any of the various ways of helping. Yeah, because I think some people might say, I want to help people materially, but I don't have what it takes to get a 6-digit salary job. Okay, and I don't have what it takes to know how to invest money so that I can make a lot of money, so that I can set up a foundation and give to people. People can have self deprecation in that thing too. Or if you're in a helping profession, I don't have what it takes to go to medical school or nursing school. I don't have what it takes to be a therapist, or I don't have we deprecate ourselves right, left, and center all the time. Oh, it's too hard. I can't, I'd love to be able to do that, but I can't be like those people who do it. And and anyway, I don't want to, it's too hard, I don't want to put in the time to be able to do that. And, and if I do it and I make a mistake, then people are going to criticize me. And so I don't want to really be in a position of having that much responsibility to help people, because if I try and help and I mess it, then I get criticized instead. Yeah. So, all this way of thinking, this can self-sabotage us in any of the different ways of being of benefit to others. It's just this whole self-centered way of thinking that says, but I'm just, I'm just some lowly somebody who doesn't have the intelligence, doesn't have the discipline, doesn't have the blah blah, you know. And so we put ourselves down and we believe that, and then we live according to that, never giving ourselves the chance to try and push beyond the limits our mind has set up for us. So the limits we have aren't necessarily limits coming from outside. A lot of the limits we have are limits that come from our own way of thinking. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes there is limits from outside. There might be discrimination. There might be, you know, a recession. Okay. But the real thing that impedes us, even in, you know, when we face external difficulties, the real thing that impedes us is our own mind and our own lack of wanting to try different things as a way of broadening ourselves, you know, and just retreating into our own little comfort zone. You know, I feel comfort doing this, being with these people, living in this place, having this kind of social life. I've built it all up, my little cocoon. And it's too scary to go outside my cocoon, because who am I going to meet? And what circumstances am I going to face? And it might be challenging. And I might have to, you know, come up with some more care for sentient beings. Or I might have to, you know, kind of put out just a tinge more energy, or I might have to not put myself down so much and create a different kind of self-image. And that's too scary. So I'd much rather stay in my own little thing and do my own little thing all life, yeah, so that I can grow old and be like my grandparents and have a lot of good memories to talk to my grandchildren about. And hope they text them to their friends. And hope that they can listen to all my memories, you know, because, and not be texting instead. Yeah. Okay? So, you know, it's this thing of like trying, stretching, you know. And yesterday in the discussion group that we had, I was commenting about how when I was little, there were so many times when I said to my parents, oh, I don't want to do this, and I'm not going to be good at it, and I'm not going to enjoy it, and I don't want to go, and how they made me do things, and how I'm really appreciative to them right now, because I found out that way that, you know, I did like certain things I didn't think I'd like, and I could do certain things I didn't think I could do. Yeah. Now, they never pushed me to learn how to fix anything and how to build anything. And to this day, I am so intimidated that way. You know, they taught me all this other stuff. Okay, I can try. But that is, you know, it's like, I'll screw in the light bulb and that's it. Yeah. Okay. But you can see that just sometimes having somebody nudge us, or ourselves having the willingness to be nudged, to go beyond what we think we can do and try something different, instead of just saying, but you know, yeah. Okay. One of my teachers, Wandarge, he encouraged us very much to learn Tibetan, and I had so much trouble learning Tibetan because I couldn't hear the difference between the different letters, not very well anyway. And he used to say, if you can become a Buddha, you can learn Tibetan. I was like, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Just hearing you speak about it exactly this way, it just shows how valuable or kind of how precious it is to be able to have a view beyond this life. Because I think even when I was moving up here, my mom was so upset that I was going to get rid of my photographs, because then what would I do in my old age? It's important to be able to look back and see what you've done and celebrate that as your reason for being. So that whole society kind of holds that. But somehow I never quite till this moment realized it's sort of like a blasting a hole into that whole thing, to be able to look and 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 look way beyond, so that the limitation of like the best we can do is have a bunch of photos isn't even a good thought anymore. But I think you kind of have to have that longer view in order to be able to throw that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what else we kind of hang on to that.
Yeah.
That's what my life, how I know it has meaning.
Right, because I have photographs
Yeah.
to show what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, or awards or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I have trophies and certificates and all this kind of stuff. So therefore I did something in my life. But what's going to happen to all those things when we die? Yeah, they're going to throw them out, aren't they? Yeah. Or maybe you think, oh, but I'll save the photographs and my grandchildren will take them. How often are your grandchildren going to look at the photographs of you when you were little? You know? So, yeah.
I'm mulling over some kind of question about doing social service work in the world, and it has to do with the motivation for it, which it can be a lot of help to people, but also at the same time, and I'm speaking of my own past in part, building my own identity of a helper. I'm this, I'm that, how much I look back and see how much I needed to, like, not climb the corporate ladder. It was like, bad, but, always do social service work. And I'm aware I helped a lot of people, very, very much. And, but all tangled up with my own ego needing to build my identity, that therefore I'm good because I'm someone who helps people, and only after I came to Dharma being able to turn and look at that. So there's some sort of question in there.
Okay.
What the question is.
Okay. So I got to figure out the question. So the comment, let's start with the comment, and then maybe we can all figure out the question. Okay, so I want to repeat the comment for the video. So the comment is that, your life was involved in social service, and you didn't want to climb the corporate ladder, but you did see that it was very important for you mentally to be involved in social service work, and you helped a lot of people and you rejoice at that, but you also saw that in doing so you created an identity and a sense of self, that now when you come to the Dharma and you're looking back at that, you're beginning to question the motivation, and how that sense of self evolved. Was it something beneficial? Was it something not beneficial? Yeah,
and say the difference between someone who would be 20-something right now and in the Dharma, and then start doing social work out of that different, not so, at the same time as the self-centeredness. So what would be
Okay, so when you started in 20-something doing the social service work, you didn't know anything about Dharma.
Right.
Okay, so how would it be different for somebody who's 20-something now, knowing the Dharma and starting out at the beginning of their career in terms of their motivation and creating an identity and so on and so forth? Yeah, okay. So I think, now again, it's going to depend on the individual. Yeah, because all these things are so individual. But I think if you have an awareness when you're young about your motivation, okay, then you can be clearer, you know, because there's still going to be the thing of, you know, I want to feel good about myself from helping others. And, you know, there's nothing that bad about that, you know? There's a thing, there's different, what's the thing, finesses, you know, you have to finesse it somehow. There's the thing of, you know, I'm really good because I benefit so many people, and I've received this reward for benefiting people, and I've received, I have a foundation in my name that benefits people, and, you know, there's that kind of stuff where, you know, really there's a very solid identity that you want other people to know how you want to be famous for benefiting people, okay? And you want to have a reputation for benefiting people. So there's that kind of thing. Then there's the kind of thing of, well, I need to feel good about myself. And this is one way that I feel good about myself, is by helping other people, okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we need to feel good about ourselves. It's not completely a bodhisattva's motivation, because a bodhisattva doesn't have this thing of, I need to feel good about myself. A bodhisattva is just doing it solely focused on the others. But, you know, we're not bodhisattvas yet. So considering we're not bodhisattvas yet, then, okay, you know, I need to feel good about myself. Yeah, and this enables me to feel good about myself, and it also benefits others, and it's living in accordance with my values and my principles, and I feel good about living an ethical life. Yeah, so I'm not going to regret my life at the time I die because I spent my life doing horrible things to others. You know, I feel that my time and my energy and my career is spent in a useful way and people directly benefit. And I try and have, as much as I can, dedicate it for the long-term benefit of others. Okay? And so then you live a very good life now, and you create some merit, and that's good. Okay? Now, at the same time, you know, that sense of self, of a solid I, is not getting challenged. Yeah. I mean, and here it's going to depend on, you know, your skill as a Dharma practitioner. Yeah. Because even as Dharma practitioners, it's so hard to challenge that sense of self, you know. Even, you know, we see it here living as monastics. It's so hard. That sense of self is just so ingrained. Okay? So if you're living that kind of life and serving people, you're not going to have a lot of time to do that. But according to how well you practice, according to what you've done in previous lives and so on, you might challenge that sense of self somewhat, which is very good in the long term, in the sense of eventually getting some habit and familiarity with deconstructing the sense of self. Okay? Yeah, now those of you who've had careers before coming to the Dharma, what do you think about that? Yeah.
Well, what I came to was seeing, especially after I met the Dharma, was that I would help people, but it was such a narrow helping, and it was only just this life. And since I had this other information now, it almost started feeling, I don't know what the word is, like wrong to not fully try to develop that to help in that way. It was like I was helping on a level that didn't match the information I had. So it was quite discordant after a while. And not having the skill to help them with a broader view, then it led me here.
Okay. Now, how do I, you said it very nicely. You should come up here. Come up here and say it.
This picks up, this mic will pick up.
The mic picked up?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
turned
then
up.
I won't repeat it, but it was very nicely said. Yeah. Okay. You?
100%, so you just said it completely. Completely. I mean, I think also for me there was a place of trying to bring as much Dharma into what I was teaching or imparting as I could, but there was also this, that discordant thing is really true. There's a place where that was not what I was there to do. And so I couldn't, I mean, people didn't come to me to change their worldview. So where there was an opening, there was some influence I could do. I could pass books, I could invite people to teachings, but there was just a place where, just as you said, there's a place where there's more help available, and I even sending you down this path, I'm no longer feeling okay about it being enough. So, same thing.
Well, being in gardening and landscaping and seeing the whole aesthetics and the attachment to sense pleasure, which I love, and that's been my big life attachment. Trying to integrate, especially when I started learning about the 10 non-virtues and about killing. Because if you want to have a beautiful garden and you want to have lovely fruit, you get out the spray, you get out the pesticides, you call the DNR and get the geese gassed because they're pooping on your lawn. You know, and knowing me, you know that I wasn't going to just mince words and be skillful about it. I was going to a full meal deal. There were situations where I was able to, just because of my love of living things, but also understanding that watching people torch a yellow jacket's nest so that we could turn the soil over and put daylilies. I was walking away too much from situations that I didn't have any power because people were paying a lot of money. I would just say, then I'm leaving. You know how I feel about this, and I can't stand to watch this happen. And then finally, I just had to walk away from the whole profession because I couldn't convince people, and it wasn't I felt that it was my place, and that's where I felt that there was too much of a conflict in my own heart. Now, it's not to say that there were instances, in particular this one family that had the geese gassed. Within that same day, they had a bird stuck in their house, and they had a bee swarm arrive on one of their trees. We got the bird out rather than killing it, and we called a beekeeper to take care of the bees because it was right in the path of traffic, and they were going to take it and they were going to burn it. And we called a beekeeper, like a Will would show up at the hive, and they just took those bees away. And the next day, the children were profoundly affected by understanding that there was another option besides killing the geese. You can do it differently. But that was a small part of a much bigger scale. If you have a lot of money and you want something, you tread over a lot of things to get that piece, and I couldn't do that anymore. And it's still a conflict because all living things, when you're gardening and making things beautiful, are going to get harmed. And so we do the best we can here, and that's why I can't do a lot of it, because I can't bring myself to create that kind of position in my own life.
Anyone else?
I feel like in part, the this life limited compassion that I did early on was a stepping stone to getting here also because in a certain way after 25 years of it, seeing the limits of it, and even pre-Dharma, before running into the Dharma, just getting to a level of frustration of, oh my gosh, you know, we did all of this and the outcome is this big and about to be undone by circumstances beyond our control. And just watching that over and over. And so seeing the limits was a part of then an impetus to start looking around for a better worldview, you know, that could hold the suffering in a more realistic way.
Okay. Okay, so there's some common themes here about, you know, getting to the point where you couldn't keep doing what was harmful in the profession, you know, that seeing the limits of how much you could benefit, you know, and seeing how the benefit you gave could only last so far, and then circumstances beyond your control would undo them. And so beginning to reassess after you've met the Dharma, kind of what it really means to benefit. And I think also reassessing kind of what does job satisfaction mean. Because I remember many years ago in DFF you were leading a group, a refuge group or some kind of group. Do you want to tell that story?
So it was a group that was particularly divided exactly by age. So there was 3 or 4 people in their 20s, early 30s, and then there was 3 or 4 people that were in their 50s probably. And as we talked about, what was the topic that got us into this? Well, we were talking about cyclic existence, and we were talking about where happiness lies and what our experience of that was. And for all of the young people, even though they all had good, strong practices too, and had really been thinking about these things, the temptation that surely that career, surely there was happiness in that. I still need to put a lot of energy in this, or I still need to put a lot of energy into finding the right partner. Those two things were really huge, you know, as promises, even though they'd experienced a lot of disappointment already. For the 50-something people, it was a totally different mind. It was like so clear that my job has never done what I expected that it should do. I have achieved all of this, and this happiness never was there. And same thing with family, even though that wasn't less. So there's something about that promise of what's supposed to happen in life that it takes some years to get over. Actually, what I was thinking too when Zoko was speaking is that to come to a helping career with a worldview that really knows that the nature of cyclic existence is unsatisfactory is a different mind than the one that goes in and thinks, surely things must be good and I can make them good. That's a whole different disaster from the start.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, you know, a lot of this is about future lives and not having that point of view. But I've also met people who have got in their mind that when speaking about future lives and hearing that teaching, that they have this idea that if they could just really have firm faith in future lives, then you know, then they could make their life meaningful and all of this. And so using that as an excuse for not actually practicing purely, saying, well, I don't have this realization, so it's just too hard for me to, you know, keep that within my paradigm and my view of the world, which is accurate to some degree, but counting on that as being like some kind of panacea or something, like if I just realized this, then my problems would go away, sort of thing, which is not accurate. And it's not helpful, and so I like to try to think of how many of these things I can contemplate and realize without necessarily using that point of view, because it's not necessarily something we all hold, you know, the point of multiple lives. So when you're talking about people growing old and having photographs and things like that, and like this is what you have to look forward to, but if you have the view of future lives, then that kind of gets, you know, doesn't seem so great. But actually it doesn't seem so great if you ever go and look at who's experiencing it. You don't even need the idea of future lives at all. You just go to someone who's old and lives in their memories, and it's the saddest thing they'll ever see in their entire life.
Exactly.
It's completely...
That was the point I was making.
Yeah.
That you don't even need future lives to see that that's unsatisfactory.
And then I was also thinking that that's in regard to rebirth specifically, but actually we can speak in terms of future lives regardless of whether or not we believe in rebirth, because there will be future lives for people after we're gone, and the things that we do now, if we act in very different ways, those effects will continue long after we're dead. And two opposing examples is the Buddha's life, who whether or not the Buddha, from our point of view, he continues on and does things, or from the Theravada point of view, his life ended. Either way, he's still benefiting us now by the actions he did. And another example is like someone like Hitler, who's long dead, but whose actions still has a major effect on the world long after.
Yeah.
So we can still have the view of, I was just thinking, we still have the view of future lives, whether or not we have the view of rebirth. So
Right,
you have to believe in
right.
future lives, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Right.
It's like an
Not just
asteroid
your
or
life.
something.
Yeah, it's not just my life. Yeah, right, right. Yeah, that you don't need a view of there being rebirth for these principles still to make sense. Yeah, because you can still see as growing old, to be an old person with just a scrapbook is going to be unsatisfactory whether you believe in rebirth or not, and that living a life in which we harm others or in which we benefit others is going to have effects on other sentient beings long after we're gone, whether we believe in rebirth or not, definitely, yeah. So again, it's this whole thing of somehow looking beyond, it's just about me and what I want, what I feel like.
Yeah, and rebirth is really good for that, but we can also widen it through the perspective of just, expanding outside of me. Because it seems that when people get caught up in this thing of, I have to realize rebirth in order to get, so that I can practice Dharma.
Yeah, no.
That's still kind of very, it's kind of falling into the same trap of very self-centered and narrow. It's just as narrow as anything else.
How is it narrow?
Well, it's saying future lives, but it's not really thinking in a broad point of view. It's just a very, all I need is this, and everything else will come together for me.
Oh, and those people aren't thinking about the effect of their actions on future generations. They're just thinking about future lives.
Or on other people who are existing right now.
Now, yeah.
There's just so many other things that aren't being brought into the equation. When I speak to people who have that view, they're really they can't think outside of that.
Yeah.
They're very kind of stuck there.